So Songezo, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Thank you
But
so much.
before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a place called Mzansi. It's in the Eastern Cape near the Wild Coast. And I was born in a village and I spent the first 9 years of my schooling there. Was it 9 years? It was 9 years, first 9 years of my schooling there. And then off I went to boarding school in 1990, the year Madiba came out of prison. And I went through university to do a BCom, dropped out. I then did a communication. I succeeded there. And but since then, I've worked for large companies, Volkswagen in the beginning, 8 years, Extrata PLC, 7 years, became a journalist, an editor, and then worked for a bank, founded a think tank, and I'm now the leader of a political party, Rise Mzansi.
And can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
I wanted to be a journalist. So the only newspaper available in my town was the Daily Dispatch of East London. And one of the columnists was Alistair Sparks, the former editor of the Daily Mail. And I sent him a letter by post to ask him to help me become a journalist. And they wrote back to me, the newspaper wrote back to me to tell me that he doesn't work for them. He's a columnist. And this was now 1987, 1986, 87. But I only became a journalist in 2013. So life came full circle.
And tell us, Songezo, who inspired you in your early days?
It was my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather. They were really solid people. They raised me. I'm the first grandchild at home. They raised me and I learned a lot from them. They were leaders in the community. My grandmother had been a teacher, but was a housewife and community worker. My grandfather was a teacher and became the school principal, but he was a preacher and, community leader, surrogate father to many kids in our village whose fathers were working in the mines and elsewhere.
And you're one of the most preeminent leaders in South Africa, in business, in media, now in politics. Can you tell us what was a turning point that shifted your career from business and media to politics?
Well, the shift really happened when I was an editor, because when I was in that role at Business Day, lots of people would tell me lots of information confidentially, usually. And in fact, for anyone who's watching this, if they see my final column as Business Day editor, I was writing about how seriously in trouble our country is, and that at some point we would all need to do something to save it. I wasn't clear at the time that I would end up in politics, but because it was to be another 6-7 years after that. But that was a turning point when I knew if good people don't stand up, we're going to be in serious trouble.
And Songezo, Herman Mashaba, who was on the show not long ago, said politics is a brutal job. And I'm sure you're not sleeping much these days. Can you tell us what is driving you? What is driving you every day to get up, to get the energy, to go out?
Apart from the goal of making South Africa better, it is the people that do the work with us in communities across South Africa. Those guys work hard under very difficult circumstances, and it's difficult not to get up when you know that our volunteers and field organizers get up every day and all they do is to try and talk to other people to join in Rise Mzansi to do what we're trying to do.
Now, Songezo, looking into the future, this year is a year of elections around the world. So many things are changing. The future is uncertain. And what does the future of leadership mean to you?
So I think the most important thing is to maybe shift how we understand leadership, people tend to think that leadership is an elected position, or it is a position in which you are appointed. But one of the things I learned from my grandfather is that you don't need to be elected. You don't need to have a position in order to become a leader. It is what you choose to do to change the circumstances around you together with others, your ability to influence people, to lead through bravery. That sets a leader apart. And I think in this world in which we live and in this South Africa, we really need brave and courageous people who are willing to do the seemingly impossible because they believe in our common future and in the common good. And whether that's fighting for democracy, it's fighting for political change or climate change and so on, or justice in many ways, I think people need to step up and lead.
And Songezo, what have you learned from your own leadership journey that you consider most important for building future leaders? In other words, what do we have to do more to encourage future leaders, to elevate future leaders?
So I think that there are two things. The first is understanding that being a leader does not mean being in front all the time. It's the ability to get a lot of people together to lead. In other words, it's finding other leaders. That is really, really important. People who can do different parts of the leadership obligation because there are no perfect human beings. That's important for the second thing, which is, people need to realize that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the skills that are needed. You simply need the courage. You need to have a strong ethical grounding, and you need to be willing to work with others, but to be courageous, most importantly.
Now, Songezo, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges, especially in the political arena? What types of challenges should they expect to encounter and overcome in their career?
The biggest challenge is coming across a lot of people that with an imposter syndrome, who just don't believe that ordinary people should step up and lead, who think that one needs very special talents or a special anointing to be a leader. There are far too many people like that who expect a Madiba out of everyone. And I always remind people that, when Madiba left Kunu to go to boarding school in Hilltown, if somebody had said he would one day become the president and the most famous politician in the world, nobody would believe them. So that's the biggest obstacle. It's in the mind. It's in the mind of the leader themselves, the person who wants to lead, and it's in the minds of the people around, people that they love and listen to. Many of those people have an imposter syndrome unintentionally, and they don't think they can lead. They also won't think that you can lead. And that's the tragedy of humanity today.
And Songezo, if you were to construct a curriculum for future leaders in political leadership, what are maybe one or two key skills you would like to factor in?
Look, I mean, there are two things rather than skills. The first one is I would encourage everyone who wants to lead to read philosophy. It's really important. It helps you take real problems into the abstract, and out of the abstract, you come out with real solutions. It can give you the ability to look at things dispassionately, to understand truth and facts and the human condition. And I would really encourage, in fact, I believe that some kind of philosophy must be taught in every school or in every university for all the programs, because I think it's really helpful. The second thing is listening and empathy. Those two things, the ability to listen meaningfully, to listen with an open mind and an open heart, and then to interpret that information and take action with empathy. If you can develop those things, I think you might start to learn faster as a leader.
Now, Songezo, as a mentor to so many future leaders, Can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
So, I mean, I never see myself, I never take a formal mentorship role, I have to say. But what I can say is this. There are a couple of people that have worked with me where I was overseeing their work, who have gone on to become as successful as I am and even more famous than I am. And I consider the time that we spent together and the guidance that I was able to provide to have been crucial in their lives. The reason I don't talk about mentoring someone to success is because I really believe that people have multiple mentors at any given point in time if they are open and willing. But there have been a few people in the corporate world that have been in the media world who have done similarly, and in politics. And some of those people work with me at Rise Mzansi today.
Right. And Songezo, looking back over your own leadership career, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and maybe worked with that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Yes. No, there are a few. I mean, firstly, in fact, I'll just mention three because there are lots. The first is Mr. Hans Christian Magner, the late former MD of Volkswagen. And what I learned to him was that it's possible to be tough, to be empathetic, and to also have integrity. If you had a deal with Mr. Magner, it happened. He was consistent as a leader. He loved and shouted at everyone equally. And that was really good virtue. The second person I worked for was Mick Davis at Xstrata. He was a really astute businessman. But again, he was consistent in his leadership. But the one thing I learned from him is that just because it's possible doesn't mean that you must do it. You must always be disciplined, especially to a strategy and your plan when you are clear about it. That protects the value of the investment that you can make. Just because you've got 10 million doesn't mean you must pay 10 million. You can pay 7 million if it's worth 7 million, but don't pay 10 million just because you have it. And the last one was Eric Rachikopa at Xstrata as well, my direct boss. He always emphasized the importance of family. And anytime there was a problem with the family, he would chase you out of the office and tell you must go and take care of family and then come back so that you can focus. I've really believed that throughout my life as a leader. After that you must always encourage people to take care of family.
Thank you. Now, Songezo, how can our listeners reach out to you and where should they follow you?
So they can find me on Facebook. They must just look for Songezo Zibi. They will find me. On Twitter at Songezo Zibi. On Instagram at Songezo Zibi. On TikTok at Songezo Zibi. So I'm available on all of those platforms under my own name, and they must look for the verification sign to make sure that they're following the right person.
The real one. Thank you. And last but not least, Songezo, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are finishing school this year, looking to enter a career? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
So the first one is that they must always listen to good advice, but make your own decision. Always look for good advice from someone you look up to, but ultimately make your own decision. The second thing I would say, do not care about social media opinion at all. You don't know those people. They don't know you. They don't share your dreams. Do what your heart wants, what you think is right, and let people comment if they want to, but do what you want to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Songezo, for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership and reminding us that philosophy and that we should all be studying philosophy.
Yes, no, thank you. I believe that with my heart.